Hey everybody, Dr. Mark Lantz here. It is Wednesday. Welcome to this premiere edition of Lead Like You Mean It. I am so glad that you have joined me, and I look forward to these conversations. We're transitioning into a brand new season of talking about leadership. For some time now, I did a live Facebook video on my personal page where we talked about leadership and wisdom and all of that. And so we are transitioning over to the Christian Center page where we are now talking every Wednesday at 12 noon about leadership in these sessions called Lead Like You Mean It. I'm excited to spend this time with you, and I just want you to join me every Wednesday at 12 noon and invite some of your friends to join me as well. We're just going to have an honest conversation about influence and about leadership and about life and where God is taking you on your journey. So, hey, I am so glad that you're here. So let's go ahead. Let's get to work. Let's dig in a little bit. Get a notepad out, and I just want to give you some things because we are coming, believe it or not, to the close of 2020. This is a year that I think all of us would probably want to put in the books and never open the cover of that book again, with coronavirus, with government shutdowns, with parties being canceled and sports being canceled, no fans in the stands. It just seems weird. Everything has changed in the year 2020. But the question is, have you changed with it? And I know we don't like to talk about that. We don't like to think about change because by nature, we resist change. We build up walls to change. And here's why. Because God created your brain to protect you. And anytime that change comes, it can be threatening. Can you agree with me on that? I mean, it can be very threatening. When change comes that we are not prepared for, what we do is we naturally resist that. And as I said, we build up walls to protect ourselves. But at the end of the day, you are never going to grow until you change. You're never going to increase your income. You're never going to go farther in your career until you are willing to change. And so with 2020 has come a multiplicity of changes that we've had to embrace. But the question is, how have you changed? And so as we come to the end of the year, what great leaders do is they have a time of reflection. They look back at the year that they have just crossed through, and they do so in anticipation of the year that they're getting ready to walk into. Reflection is huge. If you don't take the time to reflect on where you've been, you are never going to figure out where you are going. Because where you have been contain lessons that are going to give you the power to move forward and create the path ahead. So I want to talk to you a little bit about reflection today. And I want you to take some notes on this because great leaders will look back at the year and write down what they have learned. Now, the question is, why do we reflect? Why do we look back? I know many of you scholars are going to say, but Pastor, the Apostle Paul said, I'm forgetting those things which are behind. We need to put the past behind us and forget about it. I understand what you're saying, but there are some valuable gems that lay in the last 11 months that we need to talk about. And we need to reflect on. We need to be very careful about pulling those gems out of 2020. Let me give you 3 reasons why great leaders reflect, okay? Why you are going to reflect. Reason number 1 is this: reflection increases our level of intentionality. Intentionality. You need to live an intentional life, a life on purpose. You need to live a life according to the plan that your Creator carefully crafted, masterfully put into your life. And that requires you to really increase your level of intentionality. You see, reflection is the nursery of intentionality. When you are willing to quiet the world around you, you are willing to look back behind you, whether it's the day that you just came out of, maybe the month that you just finished, or for the sake of our conversation, the year that we are wrapping up called 2020. Reflection is the nursery of intentionality. That's where intentionality is born. That's where you become very intentional about the decisions, the choices that you are getting ready to make moving into 2021. Because you see, not everything that you did in 2020 was right. Not everything I did was right. We made some mistakes. We had some errors, maybe in judgment. And so we learn from those mistakes, whether it's leadership mistakes, whether it's corporate mistakes, whatever it might be, we learn from those things. And what intentionality does, and I want you to get this, intentionality shows the why behind the what. In other words, when you live an intentional life, you begin to discover the why behind what you do. And I want to say this, the significance of what we are doing and even how we're doing it pales in comparison to why we are doing it. So when you begin to reflect about everything that you've done in 2020, you need to ask yourself, why did I do that? Why did I go to that event? Why did I do that in my career? Why did I make that decision in my leadership? Because when you understand the answer to that question, you may discover there's some things that you did in 2020 that you probably had no business doing. There's some things that you've done in the past year that you thought were good ideas and you thought was a good use of your time. But the reality is it really wasn't adding value to who you were as a person, and it wasn't adding value to the direction you needed to go in life. And so by asking why and being very intentional about examining what you've done, it's given you now the power to eliminate what doesn't belong and then add the things that do belong. But here's the deal, my friend. Until you eliminate the things that don't belong, you're never going to have the space that you need to add the things that do belong. Subtraction always has to come before addition. You only have a limited amount of time. You only have a limited amount of space. You only have a limited amount of energy. And until you are willing to subtract the things that are taking up that time, taking up that space, taking up that energy, you will never be able to add the things in which you need to spend your time, in which you need to take the space and spend it on that, in which you need to spend your energy. And so reflection causes you to become much more intentional. And I want you to finish the year with the determination that 2021 is going to be a much more intentional year than 2020 was. I love this quote by Peter Drucker. He said, "There's nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not be done at all." When you're doing things that really you have no business, I don't care how efficient you are in doing those things. It really doesn't matter. And so you've got to be intentional. Reflection increases your level of intentionality. Now, number two, reflection increases your level of imagination. When you look back at what you have done and the choices that you've made, you realize this: every choice you make is like a chisel that is whittling away and irreversibly chipping away the time of your life. Some of those choices you're never going to get back again. And so what this does is it causes you to imagine yourself in a different position. It causes yourself to envision a life that is better than what it is right now. In fact, my desire for me personally, I want to make visible what would have never been seen had I not been here. And that's for you as well, because you see, you're here for a specific reason. And when you become a visionary and you imagine the possibilities, you imagine a better world and a better life, you literally make visible things that would not exist if you weren't here. And there's things that only you can do. There's things that only you can create. There's gifts, there's skills, there's talents, there's abilities that only you have. And God wants you to imagine your life with all of those skills, all of those gifts, all of those abilities, operating at their maximum potential. And I want you, and I know 2020 has been a crazy year. I know there's probably goals that you set at the beginning of the year that you didn't reach, dreams that you had for the year that were never achieved. But I want you to shove all of that off the table right now. And I want you to begin to imagine yourself doing things that you have only dreamed about so that the world can see things that only you, through the grace of God, can bring about. I want you to unlock your imagination. And so when you reflect and you look back, that unlocks that imagination, that unlocks that vision within you. So reflection increases your level of intentionality. Number two, it increases your level of imagination. And number three, reflection increases your level of integrity. Now, when I say integrity, I'm not just using the definition of character. Integrity also means to be complete, to be whole, to be single-minded, to live with the integrity of being the authentic person that you're created to be. Because you see, there's only one you. You've never been duplicated. Even if you're an identical twin, God did not duplicate who you are. There's only one you. And so when you reflect and you look back at the choices you've made, you look back at the decisions you've made, you look back at what you've achieved, what you've accomplished, what you're doing is you're looking back and saying, you know, was I true to myself when I did that? Was I true to my values? Was I true to the list of character traits that I want to emulate in this world? And if not, then you can adjust and you can change and you can live now with more integrity, being true to who you are as an individual. I think reflection is so important because it allows us to look in the mirror of who we've become. And when we look in the mirror, we don't ignore the smudge or the blemish that is on our face. James talks about that in his epistle, a man who looks in the mirror and he sees something that's wrong and then walks away and lives as if nothing is wrong. Reflection causes you to see, okay, you know what? There's an area of my life that needs to be improved. There's something that I've got to pay more attention to. I've got to do better in this area of my life. And reflection causes you to make course adjustments. And while you can't go back and undo or change the things that maybe you've done or the choices you've made, you can change where you are right now. You know, all of us would love to go back to 2020 and change, all of the junk that we had to go through, but you can't. But you can change where you are right now. And you can change 2021. And reflection is kind of like, and you that wear contacts or glasses, remember going to the optometrist and to test, he uses that little lens adjustment thing where, he puts two lenses in. Okay, is this better? And then he changes, is this worse? Better, worse, better, worse. And you're always adjusting the lenses so that you can see clearer. Reflection is the adjustment of the lenses through which you look at yourself. And when you reflect on yourself, what you're doing is you're looking at yourself and saying, okay, is this better? Is this worse? And obviously you want to choose the better lens. You want to see yourself clearer. You want to see yourself in a better way. And that's what reflection does, is it causes you to live with integrity. So if you want to lead like you've never led before, and if you want to lead like you mean it, and you want to be very on purpose with your leadership as we close out the year, I'm challenging you to spend some time in reflection. I'm challenging you to spend some time looking at yourself, looking at where you've been. Look at what you've done. Look at the events. Look at how you led. Look at the decisions. Look at the choices that you made. Now, reflection is not just an annual thing. I try to reflect daily. I've got a journal that I write down every single day, what I did, what I learned, what I felt. And I look back at the end of the day and say, okay, how could I have done better? And I start the day reflecting on what I'm grateful for. You can do it weekly as well as you plan the next 7 days in front of you. But the key is for you to silence the world around you and begin to look at the world within you. And when you look at the world within you, the chatter, the voices, the noise of the world around you doesn't mean nearly as much because you're being very intentional about your reflection. Listen, I want you to know that the best days of your leadership are ahead of you. But what's ahead of you can only be achieved until you're willing to look at what's behind you. So take this today, this short conversation that we've had about reflection, put it into practice, get your journal out, get your calendar out, look back at where you've been, reflect on it. Reflect so you can be more intentional, more imaginative, and you can live with integrity. When you do that, I guarantee you're going to begin to live a life where you lead like you mean it. Okay? I'm so glad you joined me. Hey, listen, mark it down. Next Wednesday, 12 noon, about 15 minutes or so, we're going to just talk about leadership. And I pray these conversations will empower you to become the leader that you were created to be. So God bless you. Love you. We'll see you next Wednesday.